Minister of Finance has moved, seconded by the Premier, that this House approves in general the budgetary policy of the government. I will now ask the pages to deliver the budgets to the members. That has got to be a new record. Well done. Have all members received their copy of the budget? I will recognize the Minister of Finance.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge that we lost a great Canadian last week, Helen Vary. Helen Vary and her late beloved husband, George, came to this country with nothing but the shirt on their backs, and they helped build Canada. They were great visionaries, and they were great philanthropists. And you know, Mr. Speaker, they had a saying. They came to Canada with nothing, and Canada gave them everything. So I'd like to acknowledge the great legacy that Helen and George bestowed on us, and condolences to the family of Helen Vary. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge the great work that my parliamentary assistants do to help me come to this point. The parliamentary assistants, of course, that I'm referring to is the great parliamentary assistant from Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. There you go, Rick. The great parliamentary assistant from Oakville behind me. I also want to acknowledge the great parliamentary assistants who went there before them and did such a great job from Brantford Brant, from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. Where's the other ones? There's Stan Cho from Willowdale. How can I forget that? And Rudy Cazzetto, Mississauga Lakeshore. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to begin that on behalf of Premier Ford and our entire government, it is my honour to introduce the 2023 budget, Building a Strong Ontario. Au nom de Premier Ministre Ford,
on behalf of Premier Ford and our entire government, it is my honour to introduce the 2023 Ontario budget, Building a Strong Ontario.
This plan is our blueprint for building a strong province during a time of economic challenges and change. It is a plan for a strong economy now and for the future. It's a plan to build more roads, more highways, more transit, and more broadband. It's a plan to build new long-term care homes, new hospitals, schools, and childcare spaces. It's a plan to build the critical minerals sector in Ontario's north, and at the same time invest in clean, green steel in Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie, and connect them with the globally competitive manufacturing sector in the south. It's a plan to build a health care system that connects people to the right care. It's a plan to do all of this to invest in our future, while at the same time returning Ontario to a balanced budget. This plan is our government's blueprint and Ontario's path. rooted in strong fundamentals, a long-term vision, and real action to not only face the current turbulence we see in the global economy, but emerge from it stronger than ever. Mr. Speaker, today I want to start with the numbers. Thanks to robust revenue growth, prudence, disciplined planning, and clear priorities, I am pleased to report that in 2022 fiscal year, the deficit is projected to shrink to just $2.2 billion. In 23-24, we plan to further reduce the deficit to $1.3 billion, and starting next year, we will return Ontario to the black with a modest surplus of $200 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is more than just a strong fiscal record. While uncertainty persists, this puts us in a position of fiscal strength. In fact, Ontario's net debt to GDP is now forecast to be 37.8% in 23-24, down 3.6 percentage points. And with our progress, the people of Ontario can have confidence that tomorrow will be better than today. And to be clear, a return to balanced budgets would not have happened under a Liberal or NDP government. And in this budget, we are showing it is possible to balance a budget while investing more in housing, more in highways, more in transit, more in the skilled trades, more in new manufacturing, and more in healthcare, more in education, and more in the North. Mr. Speaker, that is what we promised the people of Ontario that we would do in the last election. We promised we would get it done. And we are delivering on that promise today here in front of all of you. Now, Mr. Speaker, a lot has changed since we were first elected, and particularly since our we first introduced a budget of 2022 just last year. The world is, to be frank, a more unsettled and uncertain place. Ontario is part of a global economy and is not immune to the impact of global forces, including geopolitical tension provoked by Russian aggression in and against Ukraine, the reopening of China's economy, the energy transition, and policies such as the United States Inflation Reduction Act. More and more global trading partners have begun looking inwards. Supply chains have become disruptive and strained. The post-pandemic environment has been defined by elevated inflation and put the squeeze on the wallets of families and businesses. Mr. Speaker, people are finding it harder and harder to afford housing, to afford groceries, and to afford other household goods. And as I've said many times, Ontario is not an island. And while we remain resilient, the seas around us are stormy. Our budget must reflect, with continued prudence in planning assumptions, that leave room for future surprises or shocks. Alors que l'Ontario demeure
While Ontario is still resilient, the storm is still raging around us, and our budget must take it into account while planning in order to make sure that we have the flexibility to face surprises or shocks that could happen.
Now, Mr. Speaker, there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic. I want the people of Ontario to know that despite the turbulence of the past year, we are doing better than most, and we have a flexible plan to address these ongoing economic challenges because, Mr. Speaker, serious times call for a serious budget. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious budget. And while much has changed since our last budget, economic circumstances have confirmed our plan and is the right one. In fact, our plan is showing early results. Ontario's population is growing, jobs are being created, and we are attracting manufacturing investments. Ontario's population is now over 15 million people, Mr. Speaker. We have over 275,000 more people a year moving into Ontario. And, Mr. Speaker, this is good news, because with this growth, we are seeing stronger communities across Ontario. Mr. Speaker, I am as confident about Ontario's future as I ever have been. But while I see a brighter future in front of us, success is neither automatic or guaranteed. We'll have to work for it by taking a responsible and flexible approach. And that's why we have a plan to build a strong, more resilient and more competitive economy right here at home. Mr. Speaker, we must increase our self-sufficiency and reduce our dependence on imports from parts of the world that have no intention of being reliable or fair trading partners. In Canada, particularly Ontario, is as well equipped as any place in the world to not only decouple from these adversarial regimes, but thrive while doing so. Take the Ring of Fire, Mr. Speaker. The Ring of Fire is our ticket to reduce our dependency on unstable or unfriendly foreign regimes. But that, of course, requires us to tap into the wealth, and tapping into that wealth, in turn, requires political will. For decades, previous governments ignored the immense wealth in Ontario's north for no other reason that the work of developing that resource was too hard. Well, our government, Mr. Speaker, is not afraid of hard work. We are working hand in hand with the First Nations in Northern Ontario to build the true partnership that will ensure both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples can benefit from these untapped riches. You know, just a few short weeks ago, our government approved the First Nations-led plan for the Northern Road Link. This is a major milestone to finally build all-seasons roads. This is an important step forward to unlocking the full economic potential of the Ring of Fire. And of course, building the road to the Ring of Fire is not by itself the solution. We have to get the minerals out of the ground. You've got to build the mines. Our government is once again taking this challenge head-on. We have committed $1 billion to unlock critical minerals in Ontario's north, and we continue to call on the federal government to match our commitment. We are also incenting and encouraging exploration by providing an additional $3 million to Ontario Junior Exploration Program this year and next. Of course, getting the minerals out of the ground is not the final step. We need to connect them to a world-class manufacturing sector. Now, you wouldn't know it, perhaps, but I think we all do now, that Ontario happens to have just what it takes to create a world-class manufacturing sector. We
have to link them to our manufacturing sector, which is world-class, and Ontario has this world-class manufacturing sector.
In a little thought experiment. Imagine if you headed out back and jumped into a car parked in the legislative parking lot. And perhaps, Mr. Speaker, it's an electric vehicle, because we'd be going on a little road trip. We'd start by jumping on the Don Valley Parkway, heading to the 401 eastbound, which we have a plan to start widening at Brock Road in Pickering. We drive straight through Durham region, maybe grabbing a coffee in the great city of Pickering, or as I call it, the Pick. Then through to Oshawa. By the way, Drake can call Toronto the 6. I think we can call Pickering the Pick. We would drive through to Oshawa, which is benefiting from part of GM's more than $2 billion investment that will protect thousands of jobs. We might then double back a bit and turn north on the toll-free, did I say that? The toll-free 412, and hop on to Highway 7. Maybe take a detour to Richmond Hill, where Tesla is manufacturing the equipment to help make the batteries of the future. and maybe ultimately end up in Alliston, where Honda is making a $1.4 billion investment to make hybrid vehicles. So then we need to get back south and hop on the 401 west to the 403 and pass through Oakville, where Ford is making a $1.8 billion investment to produce electric vehicles. Well, let's keep going. Let's continue down the 403 to Hamilton, where ArcelorMittal Dofasco is making a $1.8 billion investment in producing clean, green steel. But folks, we're not there yet. We continue. We're going to go west on Highway 8, and we could swing by to Cambridge, and then keep on the 401 until you get to Woodstock, two proud auto towns where Toyota has invested $1.4 billion to make vehicles, including hybrids. And hear me out, Mr. Speaker, we could keep going further west on the 401 until we get to Ingersoll, where GM has built Canada's full-scale EV manufacturing plant. And to cap off an amazing trip, we're going to keep going southwest until we get to Windsor, where Stellantis and LG Energy Solutions are investing more than $5 billion to build Ontario's first-ever large-scale EV manufacturing battery plant with 2,500 new jobs. And, oh, by the way, Mr. Speaker, on our way back to Queen's Park, we'll take a brief detour, if that's all right, to St. Thomas, the future home of Volkswagen's first ever overseas battery cell plant. Mr. Speaker, that trip is so exciting. Not once would you ask me if we're there yet. It would be a beautiful road, Mr. Speaker, a scenic one, and most importantly, this is a road trip that would take us through some of the communities that are benefiting from the over $16 billion in investments by global auto manufacturers and suppliers of EV batteries and battery materials. And thank you to the leadership of Premier Ford and the great economic development Minister Vic Fedeli. Ontario is now the heartland of Canada's electric vehicle revolution. It's difficult to overstate the incredible significance of that statement. After all, in 10 years, people buying a new car will choose between an electric vehicle and an electric vehicle. And when they do, we're making sure they choose an Ontario-made electric vehicle. Now, Mr. Speaker, the global economy is changing, and we are seizing our competitive advantage as a province. We're not just going to keep up, we're going to keep prospering under the leadership of this government, this Premier, and we're going to thrive in the economy of the future. The
global economy is changing, and we are seizing our competitive advantages as a province. We are not just going to keep up. Under the leadership of this government and this Premier, we are going to thrive in the economy of the future.
We must continue to find ways to boost Ontario's competitiveness. That is why our government is working with partners to have shovel-ready industrial sites available for new manufacturing projects, and we are already seeing success with this, as evidenced by Volkswagen's recent announcement. So let me say it again, Mr. Speaker. Ontario is now the heartland of Canada's electric vehicle revolution. And not $1 of this investment, not a single one of these jobs, was automatic or guaranteed. While the previous government let more than 300,000 manufacturing jobs in Ontario flee, this government is bringing the cars of tomorrow, the jobs of the tomorrow, and the investments of tomorrow, right back to Ontario, right here, right now, today. It took a lot of rebuilding, but Ontario manufacturing is back, Mr. Speaker, and it's time to keep that momentum up. That is why today we are proposing the Ontario-made Manufacturing Investment Tax Credit, a 10% tax credit to help more Canadian-controlled corporations expand, invest, create jobs, and become more competitive. Our message is this: if you are prepared to bet big on Ontario, then Ontario is prepared to bet big on you. You know, seizing this immense opportunity will also require energy. We are proud to support the continued safe operation of the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station and the refurbishments of the Darlington and Bruce Power nuclear generating stations. In fact, we've already started construction on the small modular reactor at Darlington. And we are leading in record battery procurements, with the largest battery storage project in Canada being built right here in Ontario in partnership with the Six Nations of Grand River Development Corporation, Northland Power, NR and the Aecon Group. And this government will continue supporting the development small modular reactors, which will be essential to future supply. Now, we know companies are refusing to invest in jurisdictions that don't help them achieve their environmental, social, and governance goals. And once again, Ontario is poised to thrive. For example, to help boost competitiveness, the government is launching a voluntary clean energy credit registry. Mr. Speaker, we are seizing our clean energy advantage today for tomorrow. Now, Mr. Speaker, if I could take you back to our little thought experiment, you know, our manufacturing road trip. You know what it depends on for that road trip? It depends on having functioning highways, doesn't it? And our plan is the right plan for transit and highways, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals and NDP never spared much thought to highways or the people stuck on them. And in the last election, it seems that the voters' appeal region across the GTA noticed. Well, we don't take drivers for granted. We told them we would build more highways, and we are. Highway 413, we said we would do it. We're building it. The Bradford bypass, we said it, we would do it. We're going to do it. We're building it. The QEW Skyway, widening the 401 East through Durham, and the new Highway 7 in Kitchener. We said we would do all of them, and, Mr. Speaker, we are building them. Mr. Speaker, we are also continuing to make large new investments in transit, including increasing GO Transit service to Niagara from Union Station and bringing back the Northlander from Timmins to Toronto. And we're making progress on the Ontario line. We're also investing in new schools and childcare spaces and hospitals and long-term care homes. Our plan is to build new hospitals and expand the existing ones. It is a plan that is supporting a full continuum of care at Runnymede Healthcare Centre for first responders experiencing post-traumatic stress injury and other mental health challenges. And today we're making that additional investment of $9.6 million for this project to advance towards construction and accelerate it in the next round of approvals. It's also a plan to build a brand new hospital serving Mississauga and Brampton. It's a plan, Mr. Speaker, to redevelop St. Mary's General and Grand River Hospitals in Kitchener-Waterloo. It's also a plan to build a new hospital in Uxbridge and a new one in Windsor. It's a plan to build new schools in communities, including in Pickering, in Ottawa, and Atikokan. It's a plan. It's a plan to build right across this province safe and comfortable long-term care spaces in Cornwall, in Kitchener, and in North Bay, in Ajax, in Owen Sound, North Grenville, and right across this great province. We said we're going to build them. We're building them. Mr. Speaker, you might even say we're getting it done. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about something else we are building in Ontario, and that's a better deal for workers and their families. Because everything we are building and everything we plan to build depends on the Ontario worker. Every day we ask ourselves, do we have the right plan to fill the open positions across the province, to recruit new skilled workers from abroad, to fill skills gaps, to encourage more people and young people to enter the trades, and give them better protections on and off the job site? This has been the mission of this government for many months now and years. And today, with this budget, we are taking the mission to the next step. And it starts with a simple declaration. Ontario needs more skilled workers. You know, the greatest single obstacle we face to reaching our full potential is a shortage of workers in the sectors that need them, in construction, in the skilled trades, in healthcare. And while, yes, the talent shortage is global, that is a challenge, not an excuse. Ontario must do more. And with this budget, with our plan, we are. It starts with investing more money to help more workers upgrade their skills or transition into the skilled careers that need them. The Skills Development Fund has been an unqualified success in helping nearly 400,000 workers gain the skills they need to find better jobs and more stable careers in the sectors that badly need them. Whether we are providing a worker with tools and a pair of work boots for training, or giving an Indigenous worker in Northern Ontario a path to which they can build up their home community, or offering a Ukrainian refugee the opportunity to build a new career and new life in a new home, this fund has been a life changer. So, Mr. Speaker, we're putting more money into it. That is why Budget 2023, our plan to build, will invest an additional $75 million over the next 3 years into the Skills Development Fund. Mr. Speaker, in order to give more workers more opportunities, we also have to give them more new and modern places where they can learn and train. That is why we will be investing $224 million in a new capital stream of the Skills Development Fund to partner with private sector unions and others so they can upgrade and expand union halls and other training centres right across the province. Mr. Speaker, this will prepare more workers for careers and with secure, well-paying jobs that our economy needs so badly. Nobody, and certainly nobody in government or the public sector, is more in touch with the real-world needs of our skilled trade workers than private sector unions. They told us they are ready to work with us, and we are ready to work with them. Mr. Speaker, we are also making it easier for more high school students to pursue careers in the trades and other sectors that need them. This includes healthcare, where I know our doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers are already sacrificing so much to keep people healthy and safe. And that is why we're going to expedite the training of more healthcare workers by expanding access to dual credit opportunities to provide more students with a head start in their journey to becoming nurses, personal support workers, paramedics, or medical laboratory technicians. It is long overdue that our education system, from our schools to our colleges to universities and apprenticeship programs, prioritize creating job-ready graduates in the sectors that need them. That, Mr. Speaker, is what our government is doing. Now, Mr. Speaker, we know that more skilled immigrants have to be part of the solution. And, Mr. Speaker, as the child of Hungarian immigrants, of refugees, in fact, I know firsthand how Canada and Ontario have transformed the lives of so many people in their hour of need. Work that continues to this day with refugees from Syria, with Ukraine, or elsewhere. And newcomers, in turn, want to do more to contribute to their new home. There's so many people who want to come right here. They're prepared to come to Ontario. And the federal government has committed to at least 18,000 newcomers a year by 2025 through the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. You know, Mr. Speaker, we asked the federal government to double our allocation, and they have, and we thank them. But, Mr. Speaker, we're going to do our part. We're investing an additional $25 million over 3 years in the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program to ensure we can help immigrants that hit the ground running and start contributing to Ontario right away. My message to anyone considering Ontario for your home, you are welcome here. We welcome you to our great province. Yeah. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, many families are feeling the financial pressures the current economy is putting on them. And while our government does not control the global forces driving inflation, there are things that do lie in our control, which is why we acted early on to keep costs down. We eliminated license plate renewal fees, as well as license plate stickers, and refunded 2 years of fees for eligible vehicles. We cut the provincial gas tax and the fuel tax until the end of the year. And we have eliminated double fares when taking GO Transit and local transit throughout much of the Great and Golden Horseshoe. And we are expanding this initiative, including Toronto. So a commuter coming into the city only pays on one fare trip, saving them money each way. Mr. Speaker, we focused on those who are most vulnerable, offering a hand up to our neighbours who need our support the most. We have doubled the guaranteed annual income system, known as GAINS, doubled the payment for eligible low-income seniors through to the end of the year. And today, we are proposing to expand eligibility to the program so that an additional 100,000 seniors will be eligible for the program. We are also proposing to index the GAINS benefit to inflation so that when costs rise, so would our support, something no previous government has ever done in Ontario.
We have doubled the annual GAINS program for eligible low-income seniors through to the end of the year. And we're proposing to expand eligibility for the program starting in July 2024, which would see about 100,000 additional seniors to be eligible for the program. We're also proposing to index the GAINS benefit to inflation so that when costs rise, so would our support.
We've also increased the Ontario Disability Support Program rates, and we're removing barriers for those with a disability receiving support who can and choose to work. Mr. Speaker, our government will give a hand up to those that need it the most. Sadly, many around us don't have a roof over their head or a place to call home. Our government continues to be there for these neighbours. So today, we are making an historic investment of an additional $202 million each year in supportive housing and homelessness programs to provide not only a hand up, but hope for a better life for those who need it most. Mr. Speaker, in order to tackle the ongoing housing affordability crisis, governments at all levels need to work together to get more shovels in the ground. We're taking bold action under the leader of the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Premier and all of us on that side, on this side, to take bold action to build 1.5 million homes. But, Mr. Speaker, we cannot do it alone. The Government of Ontario is calling on the federal government to defer the harmonized sales tax on all new large-scale purpose-built rental housing projects. This is part of our government's plan to spur the construction of more rental housing units while helping to create jobs, drive economic development, and support growth. Now, Mr. Speaker, we're also working to improve services you and your family need, starting with health care. We are investing every single dollar we receive from the federal government through the recent health care funding, down payment, a whole lot more into better health care services. While we receive $4.4 billion in additional funding over the next 3 years from the federal government under the recent agreement negotiated by the Premier, we are investing a total of $15.3 billion more into health over that same period. $100 million to connect children and youth to care at hospitals and closer to home in their communities. And we have set aside more funding to work with our frontline partners and identify additional needs requiring our investment for the health of our children and our youth. Mr. Speaker, to make home care and care more convenient for people and families, pharmacists will soon be able to prescribe medication to treat more common ailments that they are eminently qualified to do so. And we are investing in community surgical and diagnostic centres to speed up care while ensuring patients always pay with their OHIP card, never their credit card.
To offer more convenient health care to individuals and families, we will be further expanding the scope of practice of pharmacists to treat more common ailments that they are eminently qualified to do. And we are investing in independent health facilities to speed up care while ensuring patients will always pay with their OHIP card, not their credit card.
Our plan also includes hiring and training thousands of more healthcare workers, including doctors. Because our government understands it is challenging for Ontario residents in medical school to find residency spots here at home. And we believe if an Ontario student wants to become a doctor and care for their fellow citizens, government should not stand in their way. We should get out of their way. So we are. Mr. Speaker, we will also add 100 seats for medical undergraduates and continue to prioritize Ontario students for these spots. Mr. Speaker, throughout the pandemic, our government invested billions to protect people, communities, and businesses. We went to extraordinary lengths to support our province. Unprecedented times called for unprecedented investments in our pandemic response. Now, as we look ahead, because of the miracle of vaccines, we're able to move forward. That means starting to wind down COVID-specific spending, which was always intended to be time-limited, and reinvesting in priority areas like connecting people to family doctors, home care, pediatric care, mental health, and addiction supports care. Because, Mr. Speaker, we're investing in bringing connected and convenient care to the people of Ontario. So while spending on the pandemic is winding down, investments in a stronger future are ramping up. Mr. Speaker, our government will be also investing more to protect our most vulnerable. Youth leaving the child welfare system are at a higher risk of being trafficked or experiencing homelessness. That is why our government is providing $170 million over 3 years to the Ready, Set, Go program, which supports the success of youth leaving child welfare care. Les jeunes qui quittent le système de bien-être.
Young people leaving the child welfare system are at higher risk of being trafficked or experiencing homelessness. That is why our government is providing $170 million over 3 years to the Ready, Set, Go program, which supports the success of youth leaving the child welfare system.
We're also expanding program eligibility, which currently ends at 21 years old, to include those up to 23 years old. And, Mr. Speaker, we are acting now to keep Ontario communities safe. We are providing resources to local police and communities to protect law-abiding citizens from illegal gun and gang violence. Some measures such as bail reform must be taken on by the federal government. There are too many criminals that should be behind bars who have been allowed to roam our streets due to weak federal laws. The time for action is overdue. These workers will, Mr. Speaker, I shouldn't say these workers. There are too many criminals that should be behind bars, and that's why we're acting. Mr. Speaker, I want to close with a plan for a strong Ontario, which is truly a comprehensive plan. For everything we do is connected. We are tapping into the resources of Ontario's north to supply the critical minerals that can be used in modern electric vehicle batteries that can be produced right here in Ontario. This new modern manufacturing in turn depends on a stable supply of skilled workers supported by private sector unions who will ensure they have the training and other supports they need. These workers will revitalize local communities, that in turn help us build modern highways, transit, hospitals, schools, broadband, and other infrastructures that Ontario families need. This strong economy is what allows us to invest in healthcare, housing, safer streets, while staying on course for a balanced budget. That is the Ontario I want to see. I believe that is what all Ontarians want to see.
This strong economy will enable us to invest in healthcare, to invest in housing, and to invest in safer streets, all the while staying on course for a balanced budget. That's the Ontario I want to see.
With these global economic challenges, the road ahead remains uncertain. And so our job is not done. We must continue with our flexible, prudent approach so we can be ready to take on challenges that come our way while still delivering on our plan. We can do it. We can build it. And we can build it, Mr. Speaker, right here in Ontario. We have the right plan. We have the right Premier. We have the right team. Mr. Speaker, this is our plan to build Ontario that will continue to have a resilient economy, and Ontario that has the best infrastructure in place in the world, an Ontario that has skilled workers trained for the jobs of tomorrow, an Ontario that connects you to the care you need, an Ontario that has a bright future for you, for your family, and generations to come, an Ontario, Mr. Speaker, that is strong. Now let's get this budget passed. Let's get it done. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Timiskaming Cochrane.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the official opposition, I move the adjournment of the debate.
Mr. Vantoff has moved the adjournment of the debate. Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carry? Carried. I recognize the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to Amend Various Statutes, and that it now be read for the very first time.
Mr. Bethlenfalvy has moved that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to amend various statutes, and that it now be read for the first time. Is it the pleasure of the House? I recognize the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Speaker. I move adjournment of the House.
Government House Leader has moved the adjournment of the House. Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carry? Motion's carried. This House stands adjourned until Monday morning at 9 a.m.